Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Joshua Hidayat, and I'm here today to present to you the Banker's algorithm. So the Banker's algorithm was first created by Edsger Dijkstra in about 1965, and the point of the Banker's algorithm is resource allocation, or in other words, the Banker's algorithm is also known as the avoidance algorithm. So how does the Banker's algorithm work? Well, first of all, a process has to receive, or I should say, the algorithm receives a request for resources from a process. Then it simulates the resulting state should resources be allocated to that process. Then, if the result is unsafe, it postpones the request, but if the result is safe, then it instead grants the request. In other words, the Banker's algorithm checks to see if granting resources to a process results in an unsafe state, whereby an unsafe state is deadlock. So here's an illustrative example. As you can see, we have a table containing 4 processes, A, B, C, and D, and each process has a number of resources allocated to it and a maximum amount of resources that can be allocated to it in order to complete its job. So assuming we have 10 free resources, as you can see at the bottom, this safe is state. Why? Because no resources have been allocated to a process, and we can allocate resources to a process such that a job can be completed, thus freeing up used resources for use in other jobs. So in our next state, we have allocated some resources to processes. And as you can see, we have 2 free resources, and this state is also safe. And this is because we can add 2 free resources to process C, thus resulting in a max of 4, including the job, which frees up those resources for other processes to use. Well, in this case, we allocated an additional resource to process B, and this results in an unsafe state. The reason for this is that we have 1 free resource left to allocate, and none of the jobs can be completed. Thus, we have deadlock. So, what is the current implementation of Banker's algorithm in modern systems? Well, there isn't one. Instead, we have this. So the question is why? Why do we have the ostrich head in the sand thing going on? Well, first of all, deadlock is costly to prevent. In order to implement the Banker's algorithm, there is a lot of overhead. Second, deadlock is rarely, if ever, a problem. And if it is a problem, well, the user can just reboot their system as necessary. As such, the limitations of the Banker's algorithm is that it's very unrealistic. It needs a lot of information about each process that is, frankly, unavailable. Additionally, it assumes that resources allocated to processes will be released in a reasonable amount of time, which is, again, not necessarily the case. And also it assumes that the number of processes does not change, which is completely untrue because, let's be honest, processes are created and destroyed all the time. But what about the restrictions on the ostrich approach? Well, it's lesser of 2 evils because, hey, there's no overhead. But on the downside, it doesn't handle deadlock at all. So where exactly does deadlock prevention then apply to contemporary computing? Well, first of all, we have concurrent programming, which is obviously becoming more and more popular these days. Then we also have distributed systems. And lastly, we have databases. So what are some things we can do then to address deadlock? So in current research, we have approaches that obviously go towards this. First of all, we have deadlock. And what deadlock is, it is a spin lock-based approach to deadlock prevention, pardon me. So what it does is if you have a thread T, then T's digest is equal to T and the union of the digest of whatever owns a resource that is attempting to acquire. So to make sense of this, let's say we have thread A, and thread A is attempting to acquire a lock from thread B. So the digest of A is equal to A and the union of the digest of B. So let's say thread A tries to acquire that lock. And as such, the digest of A is equal to A and the union of the digest of B. So then A spins on the digest of B as well as a Boolean value that states the lock is free. Then, if A is an element of digest B, you have a cycle, and thus deadlock is detected and the acquisition is aborted. If not, then the digest of B has changed and A is updated to reflect that. So in other words, assuming you have a thread A trying to acquire a resource 1, which is owned by B, which is trying to acquire a resource 2, which is owned by C, then you have it such that the digest of A is CBA. So what are the benefits of Dreadlock? Well, first of all, Dreadlock uses a transitive closure in proportion to the weight score graph, which means that it's less expensive than a complete and explicit implementation of the weight score graph, which is one of the problems with the Banker's algorithm. Second, there's no probing mechanism, which, again, would be very expensive to implement. As such, it also performs rarely worse than timeouts, which are one method towards handling deadlock, and in fact, it's oftentimes better. So the next approach is Pulse, and Pulse is based on the general resource graph model, and it uses high-level speculative execution in order to construct dependency information on processes, and it uses this to detect deadlocks. Furthermore, the deadlocks it detects are caused by bugs in applications and are not kernel-related. Lastly, Pulse is a daemon process, which basically means it runs in the background and is fairly lightweight. So Pulse has 3 modes. It has nap, and what nap does is it makes Pulse sleep in the kernel. Then it has monitor, and what monitor does is periodically Pulse will wake up and it will scan all of the available processes to see if any are idling or stalling or asleep. If it detects any processes that are doing so, then it enters detection mode. And what this does is it then identifies events that are holding up the sleeping process, and then it determines whether they're causing a deadlock or not. After that, it outputs a general resource graph for programmers to verify deadlock and fix it. So how exactly does the detection work? Because this is the important part. Well, detection, as stated, is speculative execution. In other words, it's looking into the future. So first, it forks the detected process inside its very own address space in order to create a speculative process, as you can see there. And it runs the speculative process as if it were the process it forked from, but unblocked by deadlock. It then records everything that this process does. It then matches this record of events with potential events that the other process that it forked from could have done. It then constructs a general resource graph, and if the cycle is detected, then there's deadlock, and, well, it doesn't do anything else. The programmer has to handle that. But the point is that it is an approach towards detecting deadlock, aside from Banker's algorithm. So what this does is it detects incorrect lock ordering deadlocks, as well as synchronization, semaphore, and pipeline deadlocks. And I have it on a good matter of fact that these last 2 are rather hard to detect, at least according to the research done by these people. Furthermore, during testing, it generated no false positives or negatives. And lastly, there's very minimal overhead. It's quite quick and quite lightweight. So here are some resources, but I want to discuss, obviously, how is this relevant? So obviously, as I said, the Banker's algorithm is not implemented at all just because it's completely unfeasible, but there is a demand for deadlock prevention and detection. And the reason for this, as previously discussed, is because we're moving into an age where concurrent programming and using multiple systems at once on individual resources is becoming more and more important. So currently, aside from absolutely ignoring it, one thing programmers often do is they have to hand-tailor their programs in order to avoid deadlock. And that's why there's research being poured into deadlock prevention and detection, and why methods such as Dreadlock and Pulse have been created, is because as concurrent programming and things like it become more important, we need tools that allow us to detect them easily rather than having to take the time to hand-tailor programs. And I completely agree with that because, let's be honest, a couple years ago, single-core processors, but nowadays, you struggle to find one. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah, great.